Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Roberts. Today on the Pious Reflections podcast, we discuss
Daniel,
the trend.
your mic is way over there.
Sorry, guys. This is live stuff. I'm so excited about today's episode. Let's try that again. Today on the Pious Reflections podcast, we discuss the trend of Christian masculinity and what is wrong with it. We also explore the life of St. Maximillian Kolbe and what he can teach us about what it means to be a man. But first, Elon Musk gets pwned by PC Magazine, maybe. Also, Matt Walsh caves under the pressure, and we can only wonder what other peer pressure campaigns will work on him next. I'm Daniel Roberts. This is the Pious Reflections podcast. Hello, friends. My name is Daniel Roberts. Welcome again to the Pious Reflections podcast, where we talk about Christianity and culture and pretty much everything random that I think about during the day. Today, we are going to be talking about Saint Maximillian Kolbe. If you know who he is, let me know what you think about him and what books you like about him, and what some of your favorite aspects of his life were. And if you don't like him, get lost. I don't really care. This is the internet, baby. You just gotta roll with the punches. But, so this little graphic here, I've got a little bit of Maximillian Kolbe. For those that don't know, he was a monk during Auschwitz, but we're going to talk about him later. For now, I want to talk about some funny stuff, which is how I always start off my podcasts. But before I even get into that, I have to plug my wife's business because
you do not have to do this. I did not require this.
I am a man who knows that women are better than men in every respect, including making money. And so I want you to make my wife more money by going to her Saints and Thinkers website and ordering yourself a very cool mug. And today we are talking about St. Maximillian Kolbe, so I have my mug right here. So, and it even makes coffee taste better. It's almost like the coffee's from heaven itself. But anyway, you're going to have to check that out. Really cool mugs there with great quotes and great ways to share the faith. So check that out. Then we begin, first and foremost, today's show with AI. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because I'm into technology and I work in that field. I am a application developer by day and podcaster by night, kind of like Batman, but without the money. And people have been saying for a long time that AI is never going to make it. You know, AI is never going to take away our movies and entertainment and all this kind of stuff. Well, then Coca-Cola decided that they were going to one-up everybody. And let me know if you can't hear this video, because this is the first time I've done this. So this is AI, all of it. Okay, so was that loud for you?
It was super loud.
Yeah, it wasn't loud for them. If it was loud for you, let me know, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't loud for you. That was an AI video, okay? Like, all AI. So that's pretty crazy. And by the way, let's just watch it one more time. They got the hands right, too. I mean, look at this. I mean, it kind of looks weird. I mean, it's a little like chubby fingers, but it's Santa. So if you wouldn't have known, you would have basically been like, yeah, it looks like it's CGI'd a little bit, but I mean, that's pretty wild. So yes, the robots are upon us. And I just wonder what movies they're going to do next. There was another guy actually out there on Twitter who actually posted some stuff. In fact, you should post it in the comments. If you guys have seen better AI videos than that, you should totally drop it in the comments and share them, because I really don't think people understand how fast AI is advancing, especially the non-techies. And they really need to know, because it's going to totally change pretty much everything about our life and our world. So anyway, the next story is that PC Mag decided to go after Elon Musk on how batteries work. And I thought that this was pretty funny. So here's the tweet. PC Gamer. Guess it was PC Gamer, not PC Mag. We had a very big debate, and I showed him he was silent. He doesn't know how to make a battery. You can read more. Now, I did not read more. And the reason why I didn't read more is because Elon Musk is building rockets that can land. And I don't believe PC Gamer for that reason. So I decided that I was going to have a little bit of fun myself. And I decided to respond. It's got a little bit of traction. There's also a link in the show notes if you want to go there and enjoy the troll. I had a long conversation with PC Gamer, and I showed them they were silent. They don't know what a woman is, because PC Gamer recently published an article about transgenderism in video games and how it's great. So at the end of the day, Elon Musk probably does know how batteries work, but we don't really care because it's not him building the car. It's his team of people building the car. So even if he doesn't know how to run a battery or build a battery, does it really matter? No. And so this is the level at which, people are going after Elon Musk, which is just kind of dumb. I mean, the guy's like top 20 in Diablo, we just found out, which we probably should ask the question, how is he top 20? Like, that's probably a better argument that Elon Musk is actually not running his businesses, is that he is top 20 in Diablo and he's 50. Like, I've been playing Halo and I get crushed. So, I don't play Diablo, but it's a tough game. Anyway, so moving on. Next story. Third story before we get into St. Maximillian Kolbe, and I feel like this ties in well because it's kind of a demasculinating story. It's very sad to say that Matt Walsh caved under pressure on the raw milk. We thought he was going to stand strong. He's always known for standing strong. Nobody can push him over. But the woman on the Culture Apothecary podcast, which apparently is a kind of granola-y podcast that my wife would probably listen to, she got him to actually drink raw milk, which was a surprise to me. And we're going to watch this before I continue blabbing about it.
It's literally, this is the thing that's crazy, is there's no way, I don't know where you got your milk, but if you are getting it from a reputable, organic, regenerative farm, raw milk is the best tasting milk there is. It's way better tasting than pasteurized milk. Do you drink pasteurized milk?
Well, I don't drink milk at all because I'm not 7 years old.
I'll show you.
What color is it?
It's white.
It's like brownish green.
No, it's white. It's
got little
crystal
hairs
clear.
floating in it.
It's from Liper's Creek.
Trigger warning for those who really have a high view of Matt and his ability to hold strong. This could be painful.
Farm in Tennessee. So wait, we're going to show you this video. Are you willing to try? If I try it first, will that put you at ease?
Well, your immune system has already...
You don't have to guzzle this whole thing.
Because you've been drinking this third world milk your whole life. And so it's like going to a third world country where they can drink the water. It doesn't mean I can.
Yes. All you need to do is a sip. You start out with a shot glass a day. All right, here we go.
Oh, there it goes.
Horrifying.
Oh my gosh. Painful to watch. You do have to wonder, though, what's next? Is he going to cave under the pressure to smoke a joint on Joe Rogan's podcast? Is that what's next, Matt? I don't know that you're going to see this, but I think we're all very disappointed. Anybody who's a Daily Wire fan, we really thought you were going to hold strong on that. And now we just question if you're just, maybe one day you're going to wake up and say you're a woman. Maybe that's what's next. We don't know. But it leads us to our next topic on masculinity and what actually is true Christian masculinity. And I'm very excited about this episode today, mainly because I feel like I have my show organized better and I'm not running rapid fire through every single point, although maybe you feel that way. But the reason why is because I've noticed that there's this trend on X specifically of men or masculine posts saying, want to be a man for God in 2024, this is what you need to do. And they'll post things like this. The Art of Purpose. How to be an extremist in 2024. Quit porn, quit alcohol, vote Trump, read books, build muscle, explore nature, eat whole foods, Practice gratitude, become self-reliant, define your purpose, focus on buying land, homeschool your kids, make ambitious friends, eat more than 150 grams of protein per day. Didn't see that one coming. Learn about your ancestors. What would you add to my list? And so there's these guys going around, they're saying all this stuff and about what it means to be a man. And he's not the only one. If you go onto Twitter right now, I searched how to be a godly man 2024 or something. And these were some of the posts that showed up. You're a man, go solo, seek God, be educated, get money, dress well, stay humble. You'll go far in life. Son of Japheth says, Christian men, this is the time to build. God has granted us this window of opportunity to retake our culture and our land. Let us not squander it. We may never get another opportunity like this in our lifetimes. Start a business, plant a church, write a book, run for office, launch a podcast. Thank you. Start a family, worship at home, lead a Bible study. May all that we do take every thought captive to obey Christ, build, create, grow, establish. And then these other guys, as man, seek God, be educated. So a couple people were actually posting this stuff. Sometimes you wonder if they're like copying and pasting each other because these guys all said the same thing. And this is kind of like it's not like the Andrew Tate stuff, but it is very similar to this prosperity gospel, this idea that, and it's not really even prosperity gospel in the sense that like, hey, you give me money, God's going to give you what you want. It's like this kind of Reformation attitude of like, well, if you're really godly, you're going to have the balls to do it. And there's a really important theme that's missing in all of these. And this is where St. Maximillian Kolbe comes in, because what's missing in all of these lists are things about the way that Christ told us to live, which is the way of suffering, to follow him to the cross. Now, that doesn't mean that these lists that people have are bad. That's not what I'm saying at all. Of course, these things are good, especially if your vocation is to be a husband and a father. Obviously, you want to be able to start a business. I mean, shoot, like, I have a job and I know people who have jobs. And so nobody's saying that you should, self-flagellate. But the point that is missing in all of these lists is none of them include loving your enemies, and none of them include suffering for Christ or for others. And this is a tough question because, like, what does it mean to be a man? Has to include something about suffering, because it's in the same way that a woman's potential for childbearing is unique to her, a man's potential for suffering, I think, is unique to him. The way in which he can imitate Christ in his suffering is a unique way in which men are distinguished from women in the way they relate to Christ. And so if you watched our episode yesterday, we talked about Mary and women. And so today we're going to talk about St. Maximillian Kolbe, who had a devout life to the Blessed Mother. And as is the case with most saints who, in fact, I don't know of one that doesn't, but saints who have a devotion to Mary, they end up living and dying very similar to Christ. And that's what we're going to find from St. Maximillian Kolbe's story today. So where I'm pulling from is this book by André Fréchard, Forget Not Love, The Passion of Maximillian Kolbe. And this book is really good. If you haven't gotten it, I put a link in the show notes. You can go to Amazon and pick it up. And it's a referral link, so that helps me out a little bit. What is really cool about this that most people don't know is that André Fréchard was a Jewish man who was in Germany during the same time period. He wasn't in Auschwitz, but he was in the ghettos as a Jewish man. And so he's writing from a really, really relevant perspective on the subject. But what we're going to find as we dive into Maximillian Kolbe's life is we're going to find an example of what it means to suffer, and not to go pursue suffering, but to go and be willing to accept whatever suffering Christ asks of us, because it's only in suffering that we actually can imitate Christ to the fullest. And so as we go through this, as I have on my mug, we're just going to give you a little bit, whet your appetite a little bit for some of the things that Maximilian talked about. He said, the most deadly poison of our times is indifference. And this happens although the praise of God should know no limits. Let us strive, therefore, to praise him to the greatest extent of our powers. Indifference is a huge problem right now, and largely because everybody is either becoming very tribal or everybody's becoming hyper-relativistic, including amongst the conservative Christians out there. Nobody wants to step on any toes. In fact, there's a large trend out there that says, you shouldn't break ties because of political things or any of that kind of stuff, which is true. You shouldn't just completely shun your family. However, when it comes to the political and ideological ideas that are of our time, the compromises that are being done are furthering an indifference. There's a big difference between going to a wedding for a transgender person, like some pastors have suggested, to keep the peace in your family, or being around individuals with your kids who have radical ideas about gender ideology or abortion, or ideas about the Catholic faith when your kids are still young. So, sometimes you're going to have to take a fast or a break from some people in your family. And I think that is totally healthy. It's called boundaries. I don't think it's a problem. But to completely and totally break off, that seems to be more of the problem. But with Maximillian Kolbe's time, we had nationalism on the rise. You had communism on the rise, Marxism on the rise. He also was a very patriotic Polish man. He almost went and served in the World War I military, but through divine providence, he ended up staying in the monastery and becoming a Franciscan monk. And so what ends up happening with Maximillian Kolbe is he has this life dedicated to Mary. His life is accompanied by miraculous events, some of which are probably more akin to Nehemiah than they are to, say, watching Jesus turn water or turning the water into wine. But again, we're going to see a saint here that really highlights why men need to be willing to suffer in order to be the kind of man that God expects them to be. And so the next quote here, he says this as he's writing to his brothers at World War II. When it comes to the war, we should thank our persecutors and express our gratitude to them, so as to obtain for them the grace of conversion through Mary's intercession. As for us, we are invincible. He goes on to say, the author, Andre, then describes an event with the Schaufenführer, a sergeant, who, belonging doubtless to that hybrid species of Scheiter dentist, whatever that is, or security service, cross between I'm pretty sure I misspelled that too because I typed it from the book, was a cross between the Gestapo and the SS, pounced on Kolbe one day, snatched the rosary he wore on his belt, and showing him the crucifix, demanded to know if he, Kolbe, really believed in it. Kolbe, having responded yes, the Schaufenführer struck him in the face. Then he repeated his question several times. Ooh, hold on. Let me get you back to the right screen there. He struck him each time. When he left, Kolbe's comrades, seeing him praying, approached to comfort him, but Kolbe told them not to worry about him, that what happened was nothing, that he withstood those things without pain for love of Mary. And to the Protestants out there, I guarantee you, if you read the story of Maximillian Kolbe, you have to acknowledge that he is a man worth imitating. And one of the things that I always tell people when reading the saints, especially if they're Protestants, is in every other area of life, if it's sports, if it's military, if it's engineering, whatever it might be, we say you should find a role model, find out what they did to be successful, and then imitate those people. With Maximillian Kolbe, I don't know a man who takes his faith seriously who would not want to be like Maximillian Kolbe, not just in his imitation, but in the mark he left on the world. His monasteries, his newspaper are all still around today. You can go visit them. There's a movie coming out with Martin Scorsese on his life. There's also another movie coming out from a Kickstarter that Matt Walsh recently shared out. For those that don't know, I like Matt Walsh. I was just giving him a hard time. And so what we see here is that a man who has a devotion to Mary ultimately ends up being able to imitate Christ. He continued his prayer, and according to the witnesses, had not his face been red from the blows, one would have thought that nothing had happened to him. So I share those quotes right now because I want you to understand that it's not like this guy was just making it up as he goes, or he was one of those guys where you could say, well, yeah, of course you could say that, but did you really live it? He really lived it. And I'm barely scratching the surface of this guy's life. I'm telling you got to pick up that book, Forget Not Love. I tell everybody that they need to get it. And, I don't know if my family's watching, but I bought 20 of these for Christmas for my family because it's that good. My wife is over there no, don't do it. Don't say it. I'm like, they're not going to see it anyway. They don't make it past 15 minutes. It'll be all right. Although mom might. Hi, Mom. But all that to be said, suffering is what makes you a man because it makes you participate, especially if it's for your faith, participate in the sufferings of Christ. Maximillian Kolbe says later on, to be crucified for the love of the crucified. That is the only happiness in this world. And so imagine for a second, we go back to our fun little tweets back here, and we say, you're a man, go solo, seek God, be educated, get money, dress well, stay humble, you'll go far in life. As a man, seek God, be educated, get money, dress well, stay humble. Does any of that sound like something that Maximilian, who took a vow of poverty for the Catholic nerds out there, but does any of that sound like something that's going to make you willing to suffer for the crucified, to be crucified for the crucified, i.e. Christ? I mean, Maximillian Kolbe, in one account, that soldier took his crucifix and beat him with it. And so in today's current milieu, we have this Christian life that is, especially now that Trump has won and Elon Musk and all this stuff, and it's great. We should all celebrate that. But we have to understand that to be a Christian is not just to suffer for Christ, but to suffer for the church. That's what Christ died for. He died for the church. And so if we're going to imitate Christ, yes, we have to be willing to suffer for him. But that suffering for him is ultimately going to probably be in suffering for our enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. And also for the church. This is what it means to be in the redemptive sufferings of Christ. Which, by the way, plug for John Paul II. And if you go to piousreflections.com, you can read my article on it. So moving on, and we're almost done here. He continues with his subject after that. So imagine he's been beaten by this cross, and you're reading through these journal entries in this book by Andre, and this next quote comes in to view. In any case, there is no corner of the world where one does not find crosses. Let us not try too hard to flee from them, but if we must, take them on our shoulders and carry them willingly. For love of the Immaculata, that's Mary, how sweet will be the death of those who belong to her. And there's this concept of a holy death in the Catholic faith. St. Bernadette, actually, on the feast day of St. Joseph, as she was dying, they came to give her last rites, and she said, no, please don't do that, because she had already had last rites 4 times, and this was the 5th time. And she said, no, please don't do that. It works too well, according to one of the biographies I was reading about her. But in that exchange with the priest, she had said that she had asked St. Joseph, actually, that he would pray for her, that she would have a holy death. And so I was bringing this up to a friend of mine, and she said, well, what is a holy death? And a holy death is best explained by the lives of the saints. The reason why Maximillian Kolbe's book is titled The Passion of Maximillian Kolbe, at least in my opinion, is because his death makes you think of Jesus' death. It's a holy death. A holy death is when you die, your posture in your death is oriented towards heaven, and not towards the things of this world, not towards your education, not towards your rockets, not towards the presidency, not towards your nation, but to the kingdom of God, to the kingdom of heaven. And so Maximillian Kolbe sticks out, which is why in this image that we have for this episode today, in the background are Elon Musk and Trump. And in the foreground is St. Maximillian Kolbe, because while we want to be successful men, we have to be understanding that what we are willing to suffer for ultimately tells us what we love. And so Maximillian Kolbe, continuing on, we enter into the starvation chamber. And I'm going to set this up a little bit for people who don't know. But basically what happened was St. Maximillian Kolbe, before he was in Auschwitz, had a printing press. He had this incredible operation of media. He is the patron saint of people in mass media. He's also the patron saint of pro-life. And, any Catholics who are watching right now, let me know how you guys figure out the patron saint stuff, because it certainly seems like that list just continues to grow based on, like, I don't know, a kind of community note system within the Catholic Church. But anyway, that's besides the point. So one of the things that ended up happening was that before he becomes the saint that we all know and love, he was actually kind of made fun of a lot by his Catholic brothers because he had tuberculosis. He was weak and wheezy. He couldn't speak very loud. He was oftentimes, one time they said mass for him because they thought he had died because his health was so weak. And when he was in the monasteries and stuff, he would usually get made fun of for this weakness. And his tendency to cry easily was another point of ridicule. These are things that today's macho masculine guys would say, oh, no, that's not a Christian man. That's nothing. That's sissy stuff. And what's interesting as we go through this Auschwitz experience, as he enters into the starvation chamber, willingly taking the place of another man, Maximillian Kolbe shows us what real masculinity is like. It's not about how big your muscles are. It's not about how big your bank account is. It's not about whether or not you can disassemble and reassemble an AR-15 or any of those kinds of things. Watch, I'm going to get like a strike on my channel because I mentioned a gun. But it's about the fact that this man willingly went in place of another. And who does that sound like? Christ willingly takes our place on the cross in place of us. So as he enters into this, and I just want to make sure I haven't missed anything. Nope. Andre sets up the stage. They're about to stick Maximillian Kolbe and 10 other prisoners into the starvation chamber because a prisoner has fled Auschwitz. And the first thing that usually happens is dehydration. He says, hunger is terrible, but thirst is even worse. Dehydration attacks the brain, cells first, and unleashes silent storms of nightmares and hallucinations. So in this starvation chamber is Maximillian Kolbe with 9 other people, I believe. And as he's in there, the prisoners have to go in and out to take out the dead. And one by one, they keep dropping. And a former prisoner assigned to the bunker, again, this is Andre writing in Forgetting Out Love, a former prisoner assigned to the bunker as an interpreter and undertaker who had, before dying in 1947, testified before a notary that Father Kolbe had no delirium and never complained as he grew weaker. He did his best to comfort his companions. When they went to take out the corpses, he was most often found standing or kneeling, praying or singing a canticle, repeated by the chorus around him, meaning the prisoners around him were singing. The witnesses passing in the corridor said that he thought he was in church. In Auschwitz, in church. Men who know what they love are going to be able to suffer for it. Men who decide that they're going to pursue whatever their passions are today or tomorrow, whether that be money or health or any of those kinds of things, eventually will find themselves in what Christians call the dark night of the soul. That time where you have to walk through the agony of the garden, just like Christ did. Are you going to fall asleep? Or are you going to pray and persevere and sweat drops of blood? These are the marks of a godly man, of a saint. Men are called to be sufferers for the kingdom of God. Now, that doesn't mean that you pursue it. That doesn't mean self-flagellation. It means, here I am, Lord, send me. And if that means suffering, then so be it. Amen, is what you're supposed to say. And so, as I said before, the Catholics that Maximillian Kolbe was often a part of, yes, he had friends and he had support and people who loved him, but he had a lot of people who mocked him and made fun of him, especially when he went to Japan, and the Japanese Catholics mocked him because they said his writing wasn't good enough and that the publication that he had decided to produce was not up to Japanese standards. It eventually became one of the largest Catholic publications in Japan. And I believe it became the largest Catholic publication in a non-Catholic country. And so we don't have time to get into it today, but Nagasaki is a real cool thing. So coming back to about Maximillian Kolbe's life. So coming back to that, keep in mind, this man was weak. He was mocked by his Christian brothers and sisters for being weak and wheezy, really more his Christian brothers, and for crying too often. You know, all of the things we would typically say as a beta male. But this man had courage despite his weakness, and he was willing to suffer for Christ no matter what. And he saw himself as invincible. And he wrote one day to his mom. He said, "Mom," in all of his health problems and all this stuff, he said, "Mom, don't worry. It's not easy to die." And this is ironic because everybody thought that Maximillian Kolbe was going to die at any moment during his life. And so what's interesting about this, in our conversation about what is masculinity, as the jailers walked into this cell one last time, there were only 3 people left with Maximillian Kolbe. And the 3 men were laying on the ground, and Maximillian Kolbe was off in the corner. And he still wouldn't die. And they had to pierce him with a poison in a syringe in order to kill him. And as they killed him, the last thing that the witnesses heard the jailers say was this. The jailers themselves were astonished. "This is a man," they said. And again, when we think about the Passion of Christ, surely this man was the Son of God. Not Maximillian Kolbe, but Jesus Christ. But we can look at Maximillian Kolbe and say, surely this man was a witness to Christ or a child of God. So, what is a man? A man is someone who's willing to take up his cross and follow Christ into the agony of the garden, the scourging of the pillar, the crowning of thorns, the carrying of the cross, and ultimately crucifixion, if providence deems it so. I'm Daniel Roberts. This is Pious Reflections. Thanks for listening. Keep thinking.